Progressives didn't just target the federal government, they also had state and local governments in mind as well. It was around this era that the idea of a city manager plan would permeate throughout the American populace as far as the cities were concerned. Galveston, Texas was actually the original city manager planned town in light of the hurricane that ravaged the city in the early 1900s. It found that the mayor and council were largely powerless so as to truly affect change and growth and fixing of the city. The idea of a city manager and city council would come into play. In this case, a city manager would be some sort of business person or engineer, maybe even a lawyer, who had a vast amount of business experience out in the private sector and could bring that subject matter expertise and help facilitate and run the city better from a contractual and other standpoint. And it was believed that through this sort of program, things could be made more efficient. And you would also, in this instance, provide more power to council members to truly work to get things together. So you have a number of folks who try to thwart this, and you try and strengthen the power of the mayor in order to thwart the city manager and the city council. But otherwise, though, it was believed that if you can get a sympathetic mayor on board, then you could influence city managers and city council members. And so various different things have happened since then. However, let's talk about elections. In particular, elections to select our United States senators. Every state has 2 senators, regardless of population. Okay. To date, in Texas, you have Senator Ted Cruz and Senator John Cornyn. Those are our senators from Texas. They are elected by the voting populace. Prior to this era, state legislatures actually elected who they wanted to represent in the United States Senate. So, oftentimes state legislatures didn't have their acts together. And the people did not have any sort of say as far as to who became a United States Senator in Congress. So, in 1913, states ratified another constitutional amendment, in this case, the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment mandates now that all United States senators not be elected by the state legislature for each state. They are elected by that state's voting population. Okay? That's how senators are elected. They're selected by ordinary voters from every state. So that is one of the major changes that occurred. Senators, they'd been just selected by their state's legislature, and they'd go off into the federal government and work from there. Okay? You would also have the idea of primary elections around this time to improve your candidates once they would get to a general election around that time as well. And it was done so perhaps not just to have better candidates, but to also to perhaps reduce political party influence. You would have political party bosses that would basically tell people how to vote, or tell legislators how to vote, or to tell various different populations how to vote. In this case, if you have a primary election, you dilute the political party boss rule and you hand over more of the voting strength to the actual people without boss rule influence. Okay? So the partisan politics of the 19th century started to give way to 20th century bureaucratic process in helping people select who they actually wanted to vote for. Okay? And people started to vote based on the idea of various different interests. Social workers would vote for candidates who promoted the idea of social work. Others, business leaders, would vote for those who had business interests, and so on. Okay, so you began various different organizations would emerge around this time, rather, that would serve various different political interests.